Welcome back, everybody. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties we had in the first interview with our first expert, Kellie. If you're just joining us, just a reminder, this is a series of interviews with experts to help you bounce back from lockdown, thrive in the coming months, and maximise the opportunities that are ahead of you. It's going to be a 2-hour live stream in partnership with our videographer and partner, Matt Eastland-Jones from Story94. And a reminder, as well as being streamed on this YouTube live, it's also via the social media channels. So hopefully now you've picked up the new link and you're here to join us. And our next expert I'd like to welcome is James White. James is a sales mentor and the founder of the Sales Success Academy, and he's going to be talking to us about sales. So welcome, James.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here. Really good opportunity, and so thanks for the chance to come and be in this environment, which is safe and secure and great.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us. And so just to kick off, can you just tell us briefly a little bit about how you support businesses and help businesses?
Definitely. Small businesses are a passion of mine. I've created a number of them. I invest in a number of them, and many of them struggle and have a lot of anxieties as a result of basically not being in enough business. And sales is king. If you haven't got sales in your business, everything else has a limited impact. So I spent my time now mentoring, coaching, training, and giving clients the ability to sell more in the right way. So selling can be done in a bad way and a right way. My approach is the right way, and we give them the right tips and tools to sell and grow their business, and just be in a position where they, I say to people, I sell fat bank balances, I sell happiness, I sell time with family, because you're not worried about paying the bills because you haven't got a business coming in. So yeah, that's what I do, and I love it.
Brilliant.
Good fun.
And when I talk sales to people, you're a name on the people's lips locally, so it's great to have you join us this morning. My first question is really, what are your biggest fears that you have about selling as we move into a recession?
So I guess whether it's my biggest, in terms of what are the biggest fears I have, I guess I don't necessarily have any myself, but I think the fears that a lot of small businesses have around selling during a recession, there's a number of things that go through people's mind. I've actually just done a small video series around sort of the fears of, there's a fear generally around the reaction that they're going to get. Oh, well, I can't talk to someone, or I can't pick up the phone to someone, or what if I disturb them? So there's a worry about a reaction. There's a worry about rejection. People don't like rejection. They feel that, oh, it's me being rejected personally, and they're going to tell me that they don't want to work with me. So they have that fear of rejection. They also have a fear of reputation. Yeah. So I call it, people, I don't want to be seen as a salesperson. I don't want to be seen as this person that's actually, literally being cheesy and the sort of used car salesman with the jacket open, and they worry about that. And one of the other fears I say is about rules. People have these rules, or preconceived ideas of what sales is. Invariably, they're not actually what sales is all about. Sales is about two things really, in my mind, that people can do effectively, or three things: building great emotional connections and relationships, great EQ, listening, and asking great questions.
Excellent. And I do agree. Most of the people I talk to about sales, it's a mindset thing quite often. So what are the most common mistakes that you see small businesses making then when it comes to sales?
Quite a few. There's some natural ones I see. Firstly, that I think they try and sell too early. That's the first thing I see a lot of the time. They will literally try and engage with someone and focus on selling to them before that person's ready. So I have a model of how sales is like dating. I say to people, if you went on a first date with someone and they asked you to marry you, you'd be like, oh, back off. So it's no different in selling. And there's a video I share on my YouTube channel around how sales is a process we have to go through. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they focus on trying to sell too early. Another big mistake that people focus on is they focus on themselves and what they want, and not what the prospect wants. So their focus is about, well, I need to sell because I need to bring income in for me and for what I need to do. And prospects don't really care about you. They don't care a monkey's about what you do. They only care about the impact you can make for them. So I think the second thing is that focus, and the mistake of it's not about you, it's about your prospect. And then that third thing, like I said, is around, people have this mistake that sales is about, gift of the gab and talking. And, people say to me, oh, you could sell ice to the Eskimos. It's not about what I talk and say. It's about how I listen and I probe and use questioning. And most business owners generally aren't very good at that sales question angle. They feel it complicated or difficult. And then the fourth thing, probably the final thing, is they don't prepare. So you're going to get a certain response. So if you put a proposal in, you're going to get a response that might say, I'll have to think about it. Or you might get a response that says, oh, the price is a bit high. So what do? Do you let your brain go, oh, I don't know what to say? Or do you prepare because you know it's coming and deal with it? So those are the four probably core mistakes I'd say most small businesses make. And on the academy and the work I do, we help them overcome those 4 and get themselves in a great position where they can really get the results they want from handling and tackling those 4 areas.
Yeah, interesting. I was joking with a client yesterday that sales is a bit like dating. Like you say, you wouldn't just dive straight in.
It's exactly it. And if you look at Ahead on the YouTube channel, I have a 12 stage model around it. It's exactly that. You also wouldn't go into a dating. Classic example again, and one of the other things that businesses fail at is they say, oh, well, and I made this mistake. I'm the biggest mistake I made with one of my previous businesses. They try and target everyone. And, I say to people, you wouldn't go on a date. Let's say you were going to go start dating and go from 18 to 80, you'd have a criteria of the perfect person for you. Sales is no different. We just need to know who that criteria is. And sales, when you literally have a scattergun approach, is destined for failure. Whereas if you've got an approach, I know I'm good for that group of people. I know I can basically solve a problem or want for those people, and I'm able to add value to them, you'll get the right results.
I like the comment you just made about knowing what the potential outcomes of your discussion may be, potentially around objections, being able to bounce back those objections. Yeah,
you have to, because they're coming. I mean, there are 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8, common objections that businesses get in general. Most of it is around, I'm not interested, I have time, I've already got a provider, cost, whatever. So you've got those there. So the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you can use your brain, your amygdala in your brain has a fight or flight mechanism. We all know, right? If someone comes in, runs into this room and starts to, God forbid, but do something, we'd be like, right, do I stand up or do I go away? Your brain is the same when it comes to sales conversations. So those that really want it, those that have joined the academy and want to get better at sales will say, absolutely, I want to be able to learn how to deal with that more effectively. And it can be done. And it's not about trying to become some sales guru, but it's just about having mechanisms that can enable you to deal with it.
So right now, coming out the other side of lockdown, which is the theme of the event, businesses have probably had to rebuild their pipeline or even start all over again. So how can businesses be more effective in creating their pipeline?
It's a great question, Mike. And the answer is take action. So I always say to people, sales is driven on 2 things: the action that you take and how you take the action. And the reality is, I talk about fat funnels. So fat funnels are literally having lots and lots of people at the top of your funnel, lots of people that want to engage with you and what you do. And if you're not taking action, and firstly, there's this concept that, well, I'll put a few things out there socially and it will come to me. Bullshit. Excuse me, I'm not allowed to swear, maybe I'm bullshit, but I will. It's rubbish. It doesn't happen that way. You have to take action. You have to be able to be proactive in developing a plan that says, who am I going after? How can I then why am I a perfect fit for those people? What tools have I got to be able to engage with those people? What value can I give? I have this concept of show value before vanity. And you've got to be in a position where you don't, if you expect the business to come to you, I'm sorry to say, you're going to be sadly mistaken. You've got to be proactive, but do it in the right way. And generally in sales, the work we do now will have an effect in 2 to 3 months' time. So my question to people now is, what value are you adding to your prospects and to your pipeline right now? Because that value, if you keep on adding value and keep on engaging and listening and understanding, will start to deliver results in 2 to 3 months' time. But if you don't do the work now, don't be surprised if the pipeline looks empty in a couple of months' time as well.
Thanks for mentioning value, because that's actually my next question, because I saw a social post that you shared, and you share some great stuff socially, whether it's videos or comments or your little walks that you do. And it was a social post that said, how to sell your value and never be concerned about the price you charge. Speaking to people right now, I'm seeing that people are worried about their pricing in the current climate. So what tips were you sharing in that social post, and what you share now?
Yeah, no, I do share a lot of stuff on social media. If you get a chance, James White Sales, I'm sure Mike will share some of the details of that. But selling value is about being able to do a number of things. I think it's firstly about being able to know where you're perfect and where you're a sweet spot for. So I always say to people only buy for 2 reasons, a problem or a want. And the reality is, it's never the price that's the issue. It's just that they don't value it enough. Now, obviously, there is a level to that. If you wouldn't go into a Range Rover garage and ask for a car, a brand new Range Rover, the same price as a Hyundai. So you have to have a target audience that you work with and engage. And I think one of the challenges that most business owners have, again, I say this from my own mistakes in businesses that I've had, is that you're not specific enough about the audience and who they are and why what you do makes a real difference in their world. And when you're quite niched and quite targeted, and if you look at a lot of the best businesses that have grown up over the years, people talk about Tony Robbins, this great, incredible motivational speaker. He started off as someone that helped people stop smoking. So he was a niche focus and then built his, Richard Branson, Alan Sugar, they've all started as a niche and built up from there. So if you want to gain value, be really something to someone rather than everything to everyone is the first point. And the second element around that is show value and give them things that make them think when you phone or when they see your email drop in their inbox that you're valuable, you're helpful, you're someone that adds to their world, you're someone that makes them think, I didn't know that, that's useful, that's helpful. When you do that, you build value in the mind of people, and as a result of that, you can then start to be really quite clear about being able to say, this is what I charge and what I do and the impact it has. And then the third thing is talk about that business case and that impact. If you charge £5,000 a day and your company or the company you're selling or working with sells widgets at a penny a day, you're going to need to sell a large amount of them to be able to make that value. So think in their world, look at it from their perspective and how they will use what you do to be able to gain a return. Because ultimately, they're generally going to only buy when they can see a return on investment. And when you start thinking like them on what they're going through and what they would do, you can then start to really get them to see that value and hopefully then share it. And the final thing, and I say about value, is prices. Little tip for everyone watching: repeat your price on a regular basis. So I always say to clients I work with, repeat your price. I will tell clients to repeat their price literally 30, 40, 50 times in a day. They sometimes want to come over and punch me in the face because they're fed up with me asking. But what it means is that your brain then, when someone asks you your price, you're able to say, my price is £5,000 a day. And someone says, that's too expensive. Really? Okay, compared to what? So actually, because you're so comfortable and confident in the language you use about that pricing, prospects feed off your uncertainty. And so when you're confident about it, and because you've repeated it so many times, it enables you to then, show them that, you are confident about it because you can deliver a return for them. But don't go after everyone and everyone. That's probably the big thing for that. If you go after everyone and everyone, you won't get that same value.
Yeah, and I love that piece that you just been sharing there. There's some great tips in that piece, certainly for me. One of the things I'm also seeing with business owners, and you mentioned it a little bit, is if I sort of push out a social media post or if I send a direct mail campaign, it just happened for me. But actually, you've got to get on the phone sometimes, haven't you, and make those calls, whether you want to call them sales calls or not. And even if it's just in a follow-up of a quote you've done, I see some business owners even fearful of that. So what tips would you share to help people overcome the fear of using the telephone?
Great, it is great. And I have a quote that I say to people, you don't email the fire brigade if your house is on fire. So especially if you're in lockdown and the business isn't going where you want to go, then you need to take the right action. A couple of things you need to do. If it's there's two types of calls. If it's the first, what I call targeted call. Cold calling is dead, targeted calling is not. Targeted calling is when you know there's a specific audience that you're perfect for and you've got evidence and examples of other people similar to them that you've helped. If you want to be able to engage with those people, there are some scripts and there's some outlines on my website. Have a look, jameswhite.business, where you can get the key thing is to prepare in the right way for those calls. Do a bit of practice, do a bit of role play, talk into the mirror, get yourself feeling comfortable to make those calls and to handle the objection which will come back saying, which will be, can you call me back? Or I'm not interested. You're going to get them. So how do you respond to that? So that's the first thing. In terms of the other types of calls, I get people a lot of the time, they say, I've emailed someone. I'm like, okay, great. So what's going to happen now? And they'll say, I'll wait for them to email me back. And I'm like, right. So every week that goes by and every end of month comes and the mortgage and whatever else is not being paid or the business is not getting there and the wage bill is higher, you're going to wait for them. Sales is all about being in control of your own destiny. So don't let other people control your sales targets and your sales numbers. Be driven by it yourself. And so I always say to people, get on the phone, talk to people. And if they can't give you a commitment to give a time and date or don't want to come back to you, then you've got to actually look in the mirror and assess that. Is it because they don't really interested and they're just being nice and British and polite? Or is it just because they've got other stuff on? Little tip for everyone watching this, never end a sales conversation without having a definitive date and time for the next sales activity to happen. So if I was going to talk to you and say, look, really appreciate chatting to you today, Mike, and I think we've had a great conversation. I'd love to follow up with you and talk about the next stage is how does next Tuesday at 4 p.m. sound? If someone won't give you that commitment back, there's a disconnect between what you think and they think. And you're better off to know that early than you are to hope that they're going to be a prospect and then not take action. But 100%, get on the phone. The phone is our best business tool. Anyone that says it's dead is talking rubbish.
Excellent. And just finally, I'll ask you a few questions myself in terms of what I wanted to know and I think what the audience would like to know. But what tips would you give a business, other than what we've spoken about already, coming out of lockdown, wanting to emerge with ability to maximise those opportunities in front of us?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time, lockdown. I'm a big believer that so firstly, learn to sell. I did a series around how to thrive, not survive in a recession. And I think what you're doing here is great. Learn to sell. If you can sell, it can help you in many areas of life. Be proactive about giving and supporting people. But I guess from a business perspective, maybe be a bit more, careful around making sure when you make investment decisions that you're going to get the return that you want, or know what that's going to look like, or have some OKRs or objectives and key results that you're saying, right, I'm going to invest this, but I'm looking to get that element back. Use data more as well, I think would be a really good thing. I'd say I've learned this quite a bit. I tend to be quite an emotional person because I'm in the sales environment, but I've had to get better at saying, right, actually, let's look at the facts. I could do a longer video, but if a 3-minute video works better than a 10-minute video, I need to do more 3-minute videos. So because of the audience results. So look at data a bit more and look at the facts and make the things. And then the third thing is continue to invest in yourself. One of the big things around lockdown is that, people had the chance to learn. You can learn whether it's marketing, sales, legal stuff, HR, whatever it is. There are so many resources out there. So continue to invest and learn and do things. Learning is the path to getting the results you want. And if you do that, you're going to be in really good shape. And I know you've got some great experts that will share some of their thoughts around that stuff as well. But it's difficult, sure. The economic climate is going to become tough for the next 12 to 18 months. I always finish this thing when I say to people, you have a choice: eat or be eaten. You can either be eaten by the world and it will spit you out and put you out on the sidelines, or you can decide that, no, I'm going to take control and eat. And I use that within my Sales Success Academy of eat or be eaten. And I help people eat because, do you know what? The alternative is not very palatable.
Great tips, James. Brilliant. As I expected today, you shared some great thoughts with the audience, some great tips as always. You shared some links to where people can follow you a little bit more, whether that's socially or on your website. And as I've said before, there's some great stuff that you share. So thanks for doing that. I've followed you for a number of years. We go back a number of years.
Yeah,
when actually I was a reseller for one of your old businesses. Yeah. And that's when I really got engaged with your content and the expertise you're sharing, and actually helped me in terms of development. And so really appreciate that. Thanks for sharing this with you today. Just tell us one more time that website that needs people to go and have a look at.
Definitely. You can follow me on social media, Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter at James White Sales, all one word, or head over to jameswhite.business. Lots of free resources. Head over to the YouTube channel. I do a video every Saturday morning. Lots of free videos and resources. Again, simple focus to help you get better at selling. If you can't sell, you're in trouble. Learn to sell.
Brilliant, James. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Join us. So up next is Alice from Dallas & Co Solicitors, who's our legal expert today, to come and share her expertise with us. Join us in a couple of moments. Welcome back to our live stream today, bounce back from lockdown, and I'm delighted to be joined by our legal expert, Alice Zaluznyj from Dallas & Co. Solicitors. Delighted to have you with us, Alice. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, really good to be here.
Brilliant. And first of all, just to kick off, a short introduction, if you may, in terms of what you do to help businesses.
So we are a commercial law and dispute resolution firm. So it means that we help our clients write and review their commercial corporate agreements all the way through to helping them when things go wrong in those agreements. And so then that's when the dispute resolution comes into it.
Brilliant. Thank you. And you certainly helped some of my clients. I'm really excited to hear some of the tips you're going to share with the audience today. So my first sort of question, thinking about the things that businesses may face as we emerge from lockdown, is when a business wishes to create a contract, then what should they really be considering?
So in terms of contracts, there's a couple of things that they should look at first of all. So initially, it's the terms and conditions of a business. So that could be with a consumer client or possibly a supplier. And those agreements need to be clearly set out. So what an agreement doesn't do is avoid any disaster. So no agreement avoided coronavirus, for example. But obviously, having an agreement in place helps you to have a roadmap to work out what you will do should a disaster occur. So looking at maybe liability, for example, I think a lot of people have realised that they should have had insurance documents in place that tie in with their commercial contract. And that's quite a normal thing. So it's the same when you look at your agreements. Why would you not get somebody to write them correctly and make sure that they cover what you're worried about? So termination as well is really important. How can you terminate that agreement and what do you want the consequence of that to be? That's really important there.
And what are you seeing around contracts at the moment? What sort of things are people sort of focusing on in terms of the small print, as I say?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually what's really great, although I guess it's an unhappy circumstance really, is that people have realised that their agreements didn't cover them for what they expected them to cover them for. So a lot of our clients are now coming to us and saying, can you actually look at this from scratch and work out how you want it to protect you going forward, which is what we have been doing. Businesses have pivoted, so they're starting new businesses full stop. So that needs to be set out in an agreement that's nice and clear and concise and, as I say, has a roadmap to getting out of it at the other end.
I think that's a really interesting point that you make, actually, where I'm seeing businesses pivot, have a slightly different offering to what they had, but actually using the contract that they had previously about probably another arm of it. So, like tip number one, I love that. So another thing I'm seeing at the moment is people coming together. So probably realising that it's been a tough time. Can I share the pain and the success going forward? So if I was starting a business with another person, what should I be really considering to protect myself, if you like?
Yeah, we're seeing this a lot. So a lot of new businesses are starting, and what people are doing is they're being made redundant, and so they're thinking that maybe they'll start their business with a friend or a family member, particularly a spouse. I know it sounds a bit harsh to say that if you're in business with your partner, say, do you actually want an agreement to deal with that? But unfortunately, we do know the world that we live in, and divorce occurs, fallouts happen all the time. So having an agreement in place to govern that relationship is really, really important. So that's a shareholders agreement, for example, or a partnership agreement. It's really, really necessary to look at how you want your shares to be divided, who you want to have control, and how you would get out of that agreement as well at the end of the day. And so that's one thing that we can really help with and look at to make sure that you just know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, death as well is something that is a reality that we're all facing, probably slightly more with coronavirus. And so knowing what will happen should somebody die is really important. We don't ourselves do wills, but we help with the businesses. So a shareholders agreement is the initial contract that you should have in place, but then maybe looking at a cross option agreement, which will help you should you want to buy and sell those shares on the disaster of death.
Yeah, I do see that, in terms of a partner passes away and then you inherit, in effect, a new partner that doesn't really want to be part of the business and the problems that can bring. The other thing I'm seeing at the moment is actually businesses want to incentivize their talent. They want to keep their talent on board and offer them some shares. And they offer them some shares, but use the same shareholder agreement that they had with their best mate when they set the business up. You seeing that at all?
Yeah, so it's really important to make sure that you've structured it in the right way. So there's a lot of businesses that are changing their corporate structure. So when you change your corporate structure, you need to look at that and work out who's going to have any sort of control and how it's going to be governed, and at what point and at what cost they're going to buy in or buy out of the business.
Excellent. I don't know, one of your areas, and I know you love it because of the conversations we've had, is dispute resolution.
Yeah.
So if a business is in dispute in any particular way, and of course, I would recommend them to speak to you, of course, but how should they best prepare themselves for a more positive outcome?
Yeah, so with dispute resolution, I think the most important thing to do is always think about the end game. So when you're looking at a breach of contract, so say you haven't been paid for doing the job that you've done and you want that payment, you need to always start with the end in mind. So looking at what you would do come enforcement. So there's no point going through the procedure of litigating and getting a judgment in your favour if what's going to happen is when you come to the enforcement of it, that that client on the person on the other side actually is possibly bankrupt, or they're going into liquidation. You don't want to be an unsecured creditor in a long list of people that want their money. So that's really, really the first place that we start. Just, can that person pay should you win? The next thing to look at is always this is more a sort of life lesson in general, but what your correspondence has been like. So obviously the agreement is really important, but as we know, agreements aren't always in writing, or they're not formalized in any sort of document. So if you have made that mistake of not speaking to a lawyer at the beginning, then it is important to make sure that when you're having conversations with people, you're not putting anything in writing that you wouldn't want a judge to read at the end. I think that's a good life lesson for everybody, really.
Yeah. Excellent. And it's really interesting. It's a little bit like an insurance policy, isn't it? I think sometimes people think, well, I don't know if I want the upfront cost of speaking to a lawyer, but the end cost, if it's ever needed, is huge in consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the small outset of speaking to somebody at the beginning, it can seem like a real big amount of money, but when you end up in litigation, it can be far, far more costly. It gets to the point where really you need to think about if it's going to outweigh the benefit of going through that procedure. The other thing that we really like to make sure that our clients think about is the overriding objective of the courts and the litigation system, which is to try and reduce the costs and keep it at an acceptable level. So, for example, dealing in some sort of alternative dispute resolution, particularly mediation. So talking is really important. And I think people think that when you get a lawyer involved, you stop talking. But in fact, that's one of the things that we try to facilitate, is the talking between parties to come to an agreement that's actually what they both want, or at least less painful than going all the way to the end.
I think that's an interesting point, actually, because I think sometimes people back off from going into disputes because they think it's going to end up in court. They don't want to go to court, face the person they're in dispute with in that way, and actually put their dirty washing out in the public arena from that side of things. So how many sort of cases do you think tend to be settled outside of court rather than going to court? Is it the majority?
Yeah, people do ask me this question quite a lot, and I think maybe it's just the type of firm that we are. We do really like to be able to settle things in a way that's going to please our client. And so I'd say at least 50% end up settled outside of court. And actually, that's hopefully the job of a good litigator rather than a bad one. Not to say that there are any bad ones, but I think it's normally what a client wants, because what you don't want to be doing is trying to run your business, particularly in times like this, where actually you've got a litigation matter going on in the background. It's not the background, it becomes the forefront of your business, especially if it's perhaps an argument with your biggest supplier or your biggest client. You don't want to be in a situation where all you're doing all the time, especially in an SME business, is looking after that piece of litigation, and it can drag on for a good few years, especially at the moment with delays because of coronavirus. So,
I want to pick up on something we spoke about on one of our one-to-ones recently, which really surprised me, by all admission, was international law and how it's governed by English law. Because again, I've been sort of sharing since our one-to-one with other people about that, what you shared with me. You shared an example of 2 clients in 2 different countries, but they were governed by the English law. And when I was sharing that with people, they were surprised that if they were dealing with a company, say, for example, in Australia, and it was an Australian contract, that they'd have to, in effect, abide by that. But you were saying that quite often English law sort of governs many international contracts?
So that's basically what we advise our clients. So if it's not that that English law governs international law per se, it's that the contracts that we get our clients to sign and agree to are governed by English law. So it's really important. That's one of the clauses that you should always look at in your contract, what the jurisdiction clause, so which country it's governed by. So English law, obviously, for us is where we work in that field. And so therefore, that's what you should be looking at when you're writing a contract. What you don't want to end up in the situation of is being governed by a jurisdiction that you just don't understand the law and it's not the right procedure. Maybe I'm slightly biased, but the English courts tend to be the best type of courts to deal with. And so we do have clients internationally that will be in a situation where they're from one jurisdiction, the counterparty is from another, and they're actually working in a third jurisdiction. And so using English law as a nice level playing field is always a brilliant place to start from.
Nice. Jurisdiction, that's the word I need to remember. Okay, so how time flies when you're having fun, and I always love the conversations we have. But one last tip from yourself then. If I'm a business, we're emerging from lockdown, what would be the one thing you'd want to share?
Spend some time and money at the beginning looking at your future. It's not nice to start a business thinking of the end, but the end invariably comes at some point. And unfortunately, at the moment, it feels like that's sooner rather than later. So do spend time thinking about what you want to do. It's brilliant to have a new idea. It's great to be starting business and amazing, especially in this climate, but make sure that you're prepared for what could happen at the end of it.
Super. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for joining us. Remind me your website address.
Yes, it's dallasandcosolicitors.com.
Brilliant. Thank you again. Thanks for joining us and sharing your thoughts and your tips with our audience today.
Brilliant.
Thank you. So up next is the data rockstar, Kellie Peters from Databasix, who's going to be joining us and talking all her expertise around data. Speak to you in a moment. Super. So welcome back to our live stream, and I'm delighted to welcome Kellie Peters from Databasix, the data rockstar. And Kellie's going to talk to us about her expertise and her experience around everything data. Welcome, Kellie.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Pleasure. And please kick off by giving us a short introduction about your business and how you help other businesses.
For sure. So I run a small business called Databasix. We're based at Didcot. We provide practical advice and guidance and training to SME organisations on all things data protection. So any concerns that you have, pick up the phone, we can help you.
Excellent. And if people were following you 6 months ago, they need to really check in with what you've been doing over the lockdown, haven't they? Because you've pivoted your business a little bit and got some really great new offerings.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think as with a lot of other businesses, we've moved everything online. So where we used to do face-to-face training, we've now got that all online. So you'll still get it facilitated by me and Regina, but it is via a web platform. We have our emergency services kind of support line. So in that panic moment, phone us and we can help you. And we've got a toolbox which we've launched, which provides businesses that want to give data protection a go before they necessarily invite consultants in. The toolbox will help them with some real practical support with breaches and subject access requests and working from home.
Yeah, and you share some really good stuff in terms of checklists and things like that for people to do that before calling you in, which is great. I want to talk about all the things that as we emerge lockdown and how business can consider the things around data protection, if you like. So with teams now working more and more from home, as we're seeing, what considerations should businesses be making to ensure that their data stays safe, remains safe and within the business?
So the first thing I would say to people is, because we've gone from being in total lockdown to coming back into the office to going back into a kind of a lockdown mode, is that first think about your transfer of the data that you've taken from the office home, if it's in a paper format or electronic, anything that you've left at home that you've then not necessarily taken back to the office, which actually does belong in an office environment. And I'm thinking of recruiters, HR professionals, where they may have printed off CVs, application forms, interview notes, and it's that movement between home and the office. Be mindful, because it's very easy to lose that data. What I've seen a lot of in lockdown and post-lockdown is this mass introduction of new technology, which is fantastic and super exciting. However, not everyone is taking into consideration the risks. So an example is a video conferencing tool where your staff have been advised to use it, but they've not been given the tools to say, well, maybe don't upload any files to everybody that's in that environment. Maybe put on some kind of background behind you to blur out your home pictures, or maybe if you're sharing a home with somebody and you're on a call, just make people aware that you are on a confidential call potentially, and that they may want to be in another room. Sounds really silly, but you don't want people overhearing conversations that your client believes is confidential. And I think the other practical thing I would say is turn off your Alexa, turn off your Google Home device. I know it sounds really silly and people say, Kellie, they're not listening to you, but just check out the adverts the next time you go onto your Facebook page and you suddenly see cat pictures. You're not a cat person, but you've been talking about cats. So don't keep them on, turn them off. You can turn it on at 6 o'clock when you're down for the day. But that would be my advice. Just treat your home as if it is your office. And if you're uncertain, speak to your privacy lead.
A really good tip. I think I shared with you the other day, whereby I asked a client one of my questions, and my actual watch, Alexa, replied to it, which certainly is a big brother watching from my wrist.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I think found quite interesting when we had our one-to-one actually was where businesses don't share business devices, and they expect people to use their own home computer and etc. And on those home computers, they've got all these apps they've downloaded, and we don't really know the security of those devices. Is that a problem you see?
I would say so. For me, I think it's because when we're outside of work, I don't think individuals are bothered as much by their privacy, and I'm happy for anyone to challenge me on that. But you'll download an app because it's a game or it's the latest kind of innovation that everyone else is doing and you want, but you'll never read the 50-page small print privacy notice. So you don't know if you've given access to all your photos, all your contact details. Now, you may not have a problem with that on your personal devices, but if you suddenly introduced all your work, contacts, details, are you exposing that information, now it's sitting on your personal device, to all of these access issues that may arise because of some of the apps that you've put in place. So as an employer, you should be providing either the technology to your staff to allow them to work securely, or provide them with guidance that says, actually, whilst working at home on this, can we somehow separate the work stuff from the home stuff so that you don't put clients, staff, and future customers at risk because of what you do outside of the home.
I always reflect back to when I worked for a business a few years ago, and I was the data lead at that business, and it was quite a bit of a pressure, and I felt responsible, and I felt okay because I could see everybody, and see what people were doing. I don't know how people with data responsibilities now when they got remote working. I want to build on that a little bit because what I'm seeing actually is businesses just seem to delegate the responsibility for data protection, GDPR, to somebody that probably hasn't got the experience. So what should those people be thinking about with such responsibility for their company's data?
So firstly, I would say if you have been assigned the actual role of a data protection officer, the law clearly sets out what's expected of you in the data protection officer role. So firstly, I would say to any organisation, if you've just assigned someone that role, check to make sure you definitely need a data protection officer, because if you do, they need qualifications, they need to understand the law, they need to understand your industry and how to apply that to you. So if you don't, and you've assigned an individual to be responsible for data protection, you need to be able to be prepared to provide them with the necessary training tools so they can have access to. So they might have touched data protection in a past life, but they don't know it enough. So they need to have, and budgets may be really tight at the moment, but they need to be given the opportunity to train in that subject. They need the ability to be able to ask questions. They need the ability to be able to talk to the board if they need to make decisions. So you quite rightly said that if they're concerned that their staff are doing, they're not following the rules, for example, and they want to introduce a new piece of software to kind of manage that, they need to be able to run that past the board and explain to them what this is, what the risks are, and what the benefits of making this change will be. Because if they're not listened to, then as a data protection lead, you are in a rock and a hard place because you've identified a risk, you've prepared to put controls in place, but if you're not supported by your senior management, then when that risk arises, the fault shouldn't then go back to the individual that has quite rightly identified it. So for me, I would say if you've been given that role, confidence may not be your thing, but ask, well, how am I going to be supported in this role? Who's going to help me? And what happens if I go on holiday? I know it's a bit of kind of a challenge at the moment to go anywhere, but who's going to act as my backup? Because I don't want to be out picking up WhatsApp messages, Facebook messages whilst I'm on holiday because someone's accidentally leaked our entire database to the web. I want someone else to be able to manage that for me.
Yeah, and I know the tools and training you've got on your site, the toolbox you mentioned, the training is all around supporting people in those roles. So I certainly recommend people to check that out because, as I've said many a time, your support is very practical. It's and I think what I've seen over the years, when GDPR got launched, 2 and a bit years ago, it was a bit of a tick box exercise, wasn't it? Let's get the tick in the box. Yeah. But now I think people are valuing their data and seeing the value of their data, and obviously the cases we've seen. So one of the things I've seen an increase on is that, and this is from speaking to many businesses, is that they're seeing an increase in subject access requests. So what are they and what should businesses really be considering?
So anyone, you or I, can ask any company that we believe is processing our data. You have the right to ask that company for access to what they hold on you. Now that can be quite broad brush. So if you were to ask Facebook, for example, for all your information, you could get a 1,000-page report that shows all your photos, all your communications, which could be overwhelming. But most subject access requests goes to an employer because either you feel that you as an individual member of staff are being unfairly treated, you might be scared that you're going to be made redundant and want to know what information people hold on you. So you've put that request in to your employer and said, I actually want to know what you hold on me. And for most people, most employers, that puts them in an absolute tailspin because the first thing is they don't know where all your data is. It might be like, it's just emails. Well, if that member of staff has been with you for 15 years and you have no retention schedule, you've got 15 years of emails to go through. If the individual has said, I want everything, And they have the right to that. You might be able to negotiate and narrow that down a little bit. But if you can't, that's emails, that's any system they have access to, that's anything that's in the cloud, that's any paper records that you hold. So when you think about that and then you realize you've only got, a month to respond to that, that's when it becomes really overwhelming of like, well, how are we actually going to do this? And how do we share it with that individual securely so that we don't put anyone else at risk, which is possible. So they're time consuming and expensive. And I see an increase in that because of the environment that we're in at the moment, where the furlough scheme is ending, even though there's kind of a new furlough scheme being introduced. Tough decisions are being made. Staff want to know what is being held on them. They have the right. Are you prepared to respond? Even to one, how much of your time is that going to take and cost that? Because it's not a cheap experience.
And I relate to the phrase you used about a tailspin. As soon as you receive that into the inbox, businesses are going, oh my God, now how do I deal with that? So I love, you just launched a rapid response service where people can just phone you and say, I've got this. Because I think you were sharing an experience with me the other day when someone said, I've got a subject access request. You said, well, talk me through it. And you went, no, actually, you haven't. And
I think sometimes that's all people want. They just want half an hour on the phone with someone to say, what should I do? And that's what the rapid response is, because it is panic mode when you get a breach or you have a subject access request. It's that, what do I do? And rather than panic and hide from it, which is not going to help you, why don't you just phone us? It's half an hour of your time, and we may actually save you a lot of heartache by that one phone call. Or we might actually say, well, we can help you and it's going to cost X amount of money and this is how we can work together. But that's what the rapid response is. Phone a friend, we can help you.
And certainly my tip on that would be, don't hit that panic button and go into the tailspin, pick up the phone. So there's a bit of an elephant in the room right now, isn't there, in terms of the pandemic, in terms of, we're very focused on that and emerging from lockdown, which is the theme of today. But if we're going to emerge from lockdown and we're going to thrive and we're going to maximise those opportunities I've talked about, we're going to face Brexit at some point. So just around the corner is Brexit. So what should businesses be considering around that? So
we officially left the European Union on the 31st of January. So we're now in a period of withdrawal. And from a data protection perspective, we can continue to share data up until the 31st of December this year outside of Europe, and we'll be able to continue to do that from the 1st of January. The challenge will be, from the 1st of January, we will be classed as a third country, which means we will be looked at the same light that the US is looked at by Europe. So companies may now start getting questions from their existing European customers who are sending them data saying, I want to know how you're going to protect my data. How is it going to be transferred securely? Who's going to have access to it? And these are questions that you might not be prepared for. So you need to know, where's your data going to Europe, to the US, to the rest of the world? You need to know what methods, what systems and who has access to that data. And you then need to make sure that you can reassure your customers that it is all under control. And from the UK perspective, we are going to have essentially 3 data protection laws that we're going to have to apply to. We're going to have the UK Data Protection Act of 2018. We're going to bring in the EU GDPR into UK law, which will be the UK GDPR. And for any European customers, any UK customers working with European customers, they are also going to have to adhere to the EU GDPR. So the only ones that won't have to worry about Brexit, and I apologise, this is a little tongue-in-cheek, is any of those people that are simply UK-based, UK customers, and their data happens to sit on their computer, on their hard drive, and is not in the cloud, unless they can be assured that that is a UK cloud and their data doesn't go anywhere else. So if your boundary is the UK, and you know that for confidence, you are UK data protection, and that's it. Anyone else, you have to be prepared for more scrutiny than you've probably been prepared for ever.
Fantastic. And I know one of the services that you do offer is an audit of businesses, so you can go in and audit those sort of things in terms of right from policies right through to actually practically what they're doing with their data, which is fantastic. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. As always, I knew it would be practical. I knew it would be great tips. And Data Rockstar, thanks for joining us, and remind us how people would look you up on the web.
For sure. So if you go to our website, which is dbxuk.com, you'll find all the information that you need. And you can find us on a podcast. So if you're on Spotify, we are Data Rockstars Coffee Pod. So enjoy.
And I love the podcast. It brings some fun to data. Excellent. Thanks again, Kelly. Thanks for joining us.
No worries.
So up next is all about finance, and our expert in the world of finance is Ian Roberts from Cashflow Creators. So join us in a couple of moments. Delighted to be joined by Ian Roberts from Cashflow Creators. Ian's our finance expert for today, and actually for me, my go-to expert, because if there's a guy that knows how to generate cash, build cash, and find cash, Ian's your man. So welcome, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
First of all, tell us a little bit about how you help businesses.
We help businesses find cash in days, not weeks. We have a panel of around about 100 cash flow providers. They vary in different types and sizes, but we find the ones right to suit the clients, whether they've got a growing business or a failing business. Definitely can find the cash for them. Just need to know a bit more about them first.
Brilliant. And talking about finance, I know you're a man very close to, like you say, your panel of lenders and the appetite for lending at the moment. But if I was a business emerging from lockdown, wanting to maximise those opportunities, how can I improve my chances of getting a yes from a lender?
Most of this is down to actually having at least some real good feel for your numbers, actually having forecasts. Certainly a cash flow forecast and a P&L forecast are really key. And you'll have experienced it yourself, Mike, that if a client can't access or doesn't understand or doesn't know the numbers, it sets really the mindset of the funders to the fact that actually, do these people actually know what's going on in a business? So they really do need to put that in. It's very easy to put in place. We provide loads of templates for clients, big or small, just to make sure they've got it in place. But the one thing that does put lenders off, if they say, well, let me give my accountant a call and I'll get them to send you the paperwork, that just does sort of demonstrate they haven't got that. So my advice is actually, please just get some paperwork, some financials in place that you know that you're managing. And forecasting is the best thing you can ever get for your business, because planning ahead and actually borrowing money way before you actually need it gives a lot of comfort to funders. They really like that, because they know that you're planning for it and you're not desperate for that moment to get it. And it's always the case. If you're desperate for it, they won't lend it to you. If you want to borrow it when you don't need it, they'll lend it to you. It's a strange scenario, but that's sometimes how it works.
I don't know, we speak common language about understanding the real numbers in your business, not just those headline numbers in terms of the outcomes being turnover or profit, and really understanding how did you make up your turnover, etc. What do you find in terms of people asking for the right amount? I know, being an ex-bank manager myself, in terms of a bit frustrating when people came and they were a bit fearful of asking for the big number, but that's the big number they really wanted. You see much of that?
I do, actually. I think some companies, because they don't have the forecast, they don't have an understanding of the numbers, they're actually not really very sure about what they're looking for. So they actually go for the amount that they think they can get. More often than not, it's better to actually know and ask for more, because one thing is for sure, lenders don't like you going back and saying you've made a mistake and you actually could do with a bit more money 2 or 3 months down the line. It's not a great way of going. They'd much prefer that you ask for more and actually paid it back early because you didn't need it. Great way of operating. Or certainly know that you need that certain amount of time, or whether you're actually looking to stage it, you might need a certain amount now, you might need a certain amount in 6 months' time, and a bit more after that. And that is something that we can plan for and build in. You just go along and pick it up as you need it, subject to all things being equal monetary-wise within the business. But to just try and get money off the cuff and not actually realise how much you need is an issue. And sometimes it can smell of desperation. And I think the funders, and we do, and that's why we're a good, I suppose, balance between the funders and the client, because we will actually filter out any of that desperation that might be coming from quick and urgent funding, and actually put that in a word and format that the funders feel much more comfortable about. But there's definitely funding available. I just think people need to look at their business and know their businesses, because they will get asked questions, and the forms now are getting tighter and tighter about what is required. And certainly now, Mike, what's happened to you in COVID, if you haven't got a good story or you don't know your numbers through COVID, that can actually be an off turn for funders if you don't know that.
Yeah, and I know, it's one of the things I always say about speaking to yourself, to understand numbers before you start speaking to the lenders, but also that the language that the lenders are looking for. Yeah. But one of the things I've heard you mention many times over the last sort of 12 months, a couple of years really, is around the increase in using invoice finance. So how can this help businesses over the coming months, and what actually is invoice finance and how does it work? Okay,
so there is a massive demand now for invoice finance. There's several things that really people have not understood yet about invoice finance. Is that you see a lot of people say, well, I'm told it's very expensive. If I give you an idea, in the last couple of weeks, I would say the average is about 2% for the actual borrowing for that, which is actually cheaper in some respects than some of the government-backed schemes that are being offered at the moment. Yes, there's some service charges and bits and pieces that go with that. The beauty of that is it's only secured against your invoices. I have a lot of clients, and you'll know this very well, Mike, that the banking fraternity do want fixed and floating charges, so they don't have a risk to their bank or to certainly large lenders. But invoice finance actually will just security against invoices, which takes away personal guarantees in the way that you'd get it in normal funding. And the beauty is that when a client pays, the money's paid back, and then you raise another invoice and it goes on and they lend you the money again. Each invoice on average now, I would think that lenders do around about 80 to 90%. Certainly 80% is an average for me. So if you raise an invoice for 100 quid plus the VAT, you'll get 80% of that every time. It also allows you to extend some of your facilities with your clients, or if you only want to fund the clients that are really poor payers, it's fantastic for that at 2%. I get a lot of clients say, well, 2%, it's like, my overdraft, it costs me money. Shouldn't really cost you money. You should build it in to your costs for your clients, because you're actually borrowing on behalf of your clients. And it doesn't matter. It's only limited by the amount that you can invoice. So if you keep billing every day, you'll keep getting money every day from the funders. And those caps on the lending are sort of unlimited, as long as your business and your clients' businesses are financially sound. And I'm finding lots of clients swap into this now. It's so easy to do. And I genuinely mean, this is funding in days, not weeks now. It's a fantastic service, and the personal guarantees and that kind of stuff is so much better for the client and their business.
There seems to be a couple of still misconceptions about invoice finance. In terms of go back 5 years ago, it's probably the dirty word. It was a business that was about to collapse if they had invoice financing. But I certainly see it as a great.
You're right, Mike. You can either let your clients know you're doing it, or you don't. The choice is yours. Which box you tick, whether you want them to have it or not, is your choice. Not normally the lenders. The lenders will actually roll with what you prefer to do.
Mm-hmm. We always talk about, asking for money at the right time. If you think you're going to need money in 6 months' time, start asking now. Don't wait until you're sort of so desperate. But we know it's tough for businesses right now. The pandemic came along. It sort of like hit businesses really quite hard, didn't it? So a word that's again used in a bad way sometimes is insolvency. But I know that you've got some insolvency solutions, and as bad as it may sound, it can be an option for businesses. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think there's a real misconception with this. The law was put into place to protect businesses and certainly the staff to do that. And the insolvency is a restructuring of one form or another. Everybody looks at it as, a business closure. And that's it, and nothing else happens. We are doing a significant amount of insolvency work at the moment, where companies are restructuring their financial position through it, and also releasing themselves from very, very heavily costed rent properties with rent on them. And it's a very good way of actually being able to restructure financially, come away from them big costs, or completely restructure and be debt-free going forward. And a lot of clients now are realizing, actually, do I want to take on several £100,000 or more over the next 10, 15 years to pay it off, when I could actually go for a restructuring position in insolvency and actually start debt-free? And people might think that's probably a little bit unfair, but that is the way the law was put into place. It was actually to help people survive, more so to protect employees, which I think we really desperately need right now. We just don't want more employees out of work, and this is a great tool for actually being able to maintain the staff that you might not ordinarily be able to, and actually continue a business and provide a service. And from my perspective, if a business does remain in business, paying taxes, keeping people employed, then obviously as a system, we've got more taxes going back into the system. If it closes and lots of people are unemployed, unfortunately, it's a big drain on the whole perspective. But fantastic way of actually coming back to life in a business, and funders like new businesses, because there's no old debt in them. It's great.
And what I love about the conversation we have, case studies you shared with me around insolvencies, is that the importance of probably speaking to someone like you before taking it a stage further, because again, the practicality that you've got and how you can reframe it for people. I get quite a lot. I don't want to think about insolvency because I don't, I've got some trusted people, I want to pay them off and all that sort of stuff. But I know from our conversation, you can still do that. You can make those sort of arrangements.
Oh, absolutely. And quite often the conversation starts with lots of funding. I need to borrow lots of money. Borrow money to put into a business that actually isn't generating an income is not wise at all, 100% not wise. And certainly your own money to be planted into it, knowing full well that it could collapse. The truth is really is actually pre-organising what you want to do. And that may not result in a formal insolvency. That might just be a restructure. But actually looking at it from a restructure from an insolvency perspective is a really good way of doing it. And it may be that the finance route is a great way of doing it. However, pre-planning it before going to an insolvency team, because you are in control of the business until you get to that position, and you can make lots of choices. You can reorganize how you've been running the business and what that looks like, and then have a look at that. So certainly can do all of that. At the moment, Mike, we're probably doing around about 4 a month at the moment with people restructuring, rather than actually going down the refinance route, because quite frankly, some of the alternative refinancing routes, we're talking 8 and 13% interest now. We're starting to see people who are providing funding from loans that are very expensive now, and I can't see how people are going to manage it later on.
Yeah. And I think, a theme that's probably come through our discussion in these last moments is really about plan it early. Plan first, but plan it early as well, and that side of it. So, in terms of your final tip then for businesses that as we emerge to lockdown, what would that be?
All of the businesses that I know that are actually making good headway and reorganizing themselves have actually been planning financially. Because let's be honest, without cash, without money to pay for services or products or staff, you can't really move much further forward. So planning now, reorganizing it, and I get lots of clients say to me, I'm constantly reorganizing, I'm constantly looking at my cash flow, I'm constantly looking at how we're operating financially. I think that's brilliant. I know it's time consuming, but do you know what? They're all the ones surviving. They're all the ones reorganizing their business or downsizing or doing something different, rather than wait until actually it stops. They know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And those financial numbers read like a book. And it doesn't take long, as you know, to actually understand that and actually do it yourself. It's very simple to do once you get it in place, and it's very easy to get in place.
Brilliant. So if people like me want to have a conversation with yourself, how do they find you on the web?
They can find me at cashflowcreators.co.uk, or they can look me up on LinkedIn. My URL on LinkedIn is Cashflow Creators. So I'm Ian Roberts. So if they look me up, they'll find me on that. Or if they get stuck, Mike, they can get in touch with you, and I'm sure you'll be able to provide them with some details.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks for sharing your expertise around finance.
You're welcome.
And some tips that you shared there. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So up next, I'm going to be joined from our HR expert, who's Becca Woolmington from HR Central. So join me in a few moments. Talking to us all things HR. Welcome, Becca.
Thank you.
So if you wouldn't mind just an overview about how you help businesses.
Yeah, so HR Central has been going for about 14 years, and we are helping clients at the moment with their outsourced HR. So primarily it's small to medium-sized businesses across the country now. We have got clients nationwide who don't have access to an HR professional or an HR team, and we handle everything for them, HR related, all the way through from the recruitment through to potential redundancies and restructuring and everything in between.
Excellent. So one of those services I guess we should start with, considering the news, is that hot topic around redundancies. So what should businesses be doing to ensure that they get the process right if they're thinking about any redundancies in their business?
I think most difficult conversations that our clients are having at the moment, they need to plan for, especially in relation to redundancies. I think it starts with understanding where your business is going, where it's heading, and then developing a business plan really based on that, because that will sometimes throw things out that you hadn't considered as a business owner. We don't actually start any of the processes with any of our clients unless they've gone through that process of sitting down and really considering what it is that they want to achieve. People make very rash decisions when they're under a lot of pressure, and a lot of business owners at the moment are under a lot of pressure, especially financially. They may be frightened about what the future holds. And I think for them to sit down and really consider what the steps are that need to take place in relation to their people and how the business can maybe pivot and move forward are really, really key. So it starts with the planning process and not going straight into having those consultation discussions. Once we have the business process all sorted, it's about planning who's going to be within the pool. So you may think that somebody is in a standalone role, for example, but they may have comparable skill set to somebody else within the business. So it's about getting that pool right from day one and including everybody in the pool so that you have an appropriate group of people, and consulting fully. I think many of our clients don't consult fully enough. They think having a conversation to tell people that they are at risk is their commitment to the redundancy process. And it is all around having those proper in-depth communications with your employees to really understand if there's anything else that you can do, because they may well have some suggestions you haven't thought of as a business owner. It's really key that you consult fully. The tribunals will look at how many consultation discussions you've had, the content of those. With the advent of Zoom and being able to record calls now, it's a really useful process to have. And to record or take notes in full so that you can demonstrate you've consulted fully. And I think that process usually takes longer than everybody thinks. It can take 2 or 3 weeks. And I think it's about business owners having a really good, robust idea of how long these things take and accommodating that time frame.
Yeah, and I know the support you've offered a couple of my clients who've they've decided to reorganise their structure of the business to be able to move forward. That might mean recruiting in due course, but you've really sort of helped them and handheld them. And I think the bit that has been really clear from them is get the process right from the day one. Don't start the process and then involve me. Get me involved right at the start, and let's do this properly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what the service that we offer as a consultancy is, to be a sounding board for our clients. It's not to get involved when there's a problem. It's to make sure that they're compliant from the minute they start, whether that's employing their first hire or making somebody redundant. Training, every aspect of HR, I think, needs good planning, because there's always a cost implication associated with it, whether it's my time and the employees' time. Employing people is a really expensive process. You need to get it right. And if you can save time by putting in processes in place that save that time, then I think that's definitely the way forward. But planning is always the best process for every single aspect of employing somebody within your business.
And what I love about HR Central is you sort of like encapsulate all those sort of services that somebody in a business would need around their people, and part of that includes a recruitment solution, which I know that you offer as part of your service. So I guess my question is, when businesses are recruiting, how should they link that to their sort of HR considerations?
I think it goes along the lines of the business plan again. I think if they've got a good, robust business plan and they understand which direction they're pushing their business, then the skill set will naturally fall from that. We always encourage our clients to have good, robust job descriptions so that they can understand exactly who does what within their business. And then we do a skill set analysis. So we will actually say to them, right, you maybe need a full-time accountant now, your business is growing, you've outsourced that before, let's look at the cost of that. Is it cheaper for you to bring somebody internal now? Is it easier to have somebody on hand day in, day out, sitting in your office to be able to ask those sort of questions? So we go into a bit more detail about what the business needs and then go to market to find that person. And because we work with our clients in quite a detailed way. I mean, we do become part of their management team. They do talk to us very regularly. I speak to most of my clients on a daily basis, as do my team. We understand where they're going, what they need, and we are a positive pushback on some things. For example, there was a client recently who said they just wanted a finance assistant with very minimal qualifications, when actually they were spending a shed load of money with an accountancy firm externally. And we went to market and were able to offer them some CVs with only a fraction more of a salary commitment, and they were happy with the result because we were able to demonstrate to them and challenge them a little bit on what they were actually looking for. So because we know our clients really well, we were able to offer them, as an HR manager internally would, a bit more advice and support on what they might need going forwards.
Excellent. And yeah, I just love that link. So I think also thinking about businesses as we emerge from lockdown, and business owners are going to have some real tough decisions and tough conversations actually in those coming months. Not necessarily all about redundancies, it might be around performance and change of roles, etc. So what tips would you share for those that are going to have those sort of difficult conversations?
Again, I think it goes back to planning. I think it goes back to collecting all of your facts and being really sure of your processes and policies in relation to some of these difficult conversations. And you're right, it's not all about redundancy. People are frightened for their jobs, but we need to make sure that work environments are COVID safe too. And there are a lot of discussions going on at the moment around working from home, being flexible, productivity issues. Some of our managers are having to change the way that they manage their people because they're not actually in the office environment with them. And I think it's all around having data and management information to support the decisions you make as a business owner and an employer. We provide a lot of HR information via our online systems. All of our systems are cloud-based. So we have an HR information system that all of our clients have. And we help them with the management of that. So the document storage, sickness, absence, policies, procedures, they can have all of those employee handbooks and employee information and company information to hand and make sure that everybody's read it. And I think in these days of people working more flexibly, and I can't see that changing, I think we are going to have more of a hybrid situation where people work flexibly either in the office and at home. There'll be a hybrid of the two. That managers need to get smarter at how they manage their people, and that all comes from management data. So I think it's about planning those conversations, whether they're sickness absence, whether they're performance related, whether they're capability related. All of those things have to have some form of data behind them. And again, we help them to plan those conversations, and it is all in the planning. I think if you've got all the data and you can give the employee the evidence to support what you're saying, those conversations become easier. And also to be non-emotional about it. And that's difficult as a business owner. Sometimes, it's your money, it's your business, it's your blood, sweat and tears that got you to that point. We encourage our clients to just take a deep breath, plan for what you're going to say, have the data and the evidence to support what you want to say, and to have a good idea of what you're trying to achieve with the end result. And usually those conversations go according to plan and we can get through the other side. But if they don't, at least they've followed a fair process, and that protects them legally.
That's what I love about what you do at HR Central. It's, you've changed the mindset, I think, of people, how they focus on HR in terms of it being a process. We've got to go through a redundancy, or we need to get a contract for a new employment. You want to be part of people's businesses. You want to be part of that planning procedure so you understand their business, so you can give the best advice for people. I think that's a fantastic part of your offering.
Yeah, it's where we get all our job satisfaction. I spent a lot of time in corporate life being part of a big organisation, and I love that. You develop long-term relationships with people. You can see them go through their career, lots of promotions. You're part of something that's really special, and you can help a business grow. And that's really why I set HR Central up, and that's why we develop these long-term relationships. And we're available for ad hoc projects, of course we are, but that's normally how we start with our long-term relationships with our clients. They come to us with the problem, we resolve it. We might gently suggest that they might want to do something differently in the future, and then before we know it, we've been working with them for 10 years. So we've got a lot of long-term clients, but a lot of new ones too, and we're looking forward to developing those long-term relationships, because like I say, that is where we get all our job satisfaction from as HR professionals.
And I think it's, from the clients I've referred to, it's been some of the simple things that you've shared as well, like you said about the software that you use. You're gold partners with that software provider, but it's helped clients sort of organise themselves, and just that simplicity of having things in one place, reference for their staff as much as for themselves. Yeah,
I think HR is one of those things, nobody likes it. I love it.
Apart from you,
I love it. But I think a lot of my clients start with their head in their hands saying, hate HR, don't have time for it, don't understand it, don't like it. It's something I know I have to do, but it's last on the list. And hopefully we push it to the fore a little bit and make it easier for our clients to have those difficult conversations, because we're there to support. I'm always on the end of the phone. And not that I try and publicise weekends and evening calls, but if I'm needed, then I'm needed. And if I'd rather people phoned us and told us what the issues were so that we can help them ahead of time than them lying in bed worrying about an HR issue. And hopefully we just make their lives easier and save them a bit of time.
So I just want to reflect on, I guess, the other end of HR, if you like. So we've got the sort of the dismissal end, if you like. But hopefully, as we emerge from lockdown, people have established their teams. They know what their talent is. That they want to retain that talent and want to work with that talent. But as business owners, we all need to ensure that our team are performing in their roles. So what tips would you share with businesses to look at better managing the performance of their people?
I think it's about communication and regular communication. And it doesn't have to always be on a negative side of things. I think it's around checking in, making sure people know what they're doing is the right thing for the business, about sharing the business plan if you can. I mean, I know some of that's confidential and you might not want to share all of it, but it's about getting them engaged and involved with what's going on. For example, my team and I have a discussion every week. We have daily discussions about what we're going to do so that it's operationally running smoothly. But once a month we go out for lunch and we sit and we just chat about what we're going to do, how the business is moving forward, any trends that we've seen that we could investigate and really mine really for future reference and for future business. I think it's about engagement. We do a lot of employee engagement surveys for our clients and are able to interpret those for them and give them a tick list of what they should be doing and sort of managing and mentoring their teams. Not everybody's a good people manager, and we're there to support and help them with that, but it doesn't have to be a negative tone. I think it's just about checking in, because in these times, there's a very fine line between somebody's personal life and their work balance. And I think that's become a bit fuzzy over the shutdown period. And I think it's good communication from an employer is absolutely essential to keep everybody on track and make sure that they're working towards a common goal.
Brilliant. So you've shared two great tips and some stories around planning and communication. So just lastly, any last tip that you would share for business owners that are emerging from lockdown to make sure that they thrive going forward?
I think it's about planning and keeping your nerve and looking where you can go as a business. There may be some things that you can't do now, but maybe there are other things that you could add to your portfolio that would take you forward, and not rushing into things. Your employees are your most probably expensive resource as a business owner, and making sure they're working to full capacity for your benefit is definitely the way forward. So it's about communication and planning.
Super. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for
you.
sharing your thoughts, your tips, your expertise with us today.
Thanks,
There's
Mike.
certainly some value there for people to think about their HR and how they can involve organisations, particularly like you, I would recommend. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
So up next is our recruitment expert, and I'm delighted to be joined in a moment by Helen Fallon from Global CTS. Join me again in a couple of moments. Okay, so welcome back to our live stream. Delighted to be joined by Helen Fallon, who's from Global CTS, but our recruitment expert for today. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Mike.
Can you just start by telling us a little bit about how you support businesses?
Absolutely. I've been in recruitment for 24 years now, straight from school, obviously, and have learnt some amazing processes, the way that we support people, both from a candidate point of view and from a client point of view. And I think when I started the business 3.5 years ago, the decision behind that was to take all those best bits and cherry pick everything from that, and then to create something I think slightly different in the area. So I think one of the key things that makes us different from a lot of recruiters is that we do talk to people. It's about communication, and it's not about just email. It's about picking the phone up and actually building a solid relationship, and having to give people negative feedback sometimes as well as the positive feedback.
Okay, so I've got some questions. Thank you for that. I've got some questions for you based on some things I've been seeing in the market space right now, and hopefully from your tips will help people as we emerge from lockdown. I'm seeing at the moment when businesses advertise for a role that they're being inundated with a large number of applications that they didn't foresee that sort of number. So do you have any tips to share which can help business owners to create a shortlist from that huge number?
It's a great question, particularly at this time. And I think as an experienced recruiter, we experienced this back in 2008 when we had the recession. And I think, a lot of new recruiters and people who are in HR who are maybe new to that won't have experienced that, particularly in the Oxfordshire area where we have generally a very low unemployment area, and the average applications is probably 10 to 30, whereas at the moment we're receiving up to 500-600 applications per advert. That's time consuming from a recruiter's point of view, from a HR's point of view, an office manager or a business owner. So it's really critical to make your adverts very to the point. If there's a particular skill set that you require that's non-negotiable, you can use the auto reject questions, which are really essential. To give you an example, we're working on a finance role at the moment where it is essential that the candidate has advanced Excel. So we tag a test to the application. So the candidate can't send the CV to us until they complete the test. Now, we will still get to the application, but along with that, we also get a score to say whether that person is advanced or intermediate. And to give you a guidance, we received over 790 applications for that role. Of that, only 15 had advanced Excel.
Wow. That's interesting. And it's those sort of huge numbers that I've been hearing that people are receiving that and sort of valuing then the support from people like yourselves to actually decipher all this information that they've gotten, because I've looked at CVs before and you think you get some standout candidates, but actually differentiation between that one and that one. And one of the things I loved you saying the other day when I was listening to something you said was how you know the market, and therefore you'll see someone apply for that job, but suddenly their sort of skill has changed because they're applying for that job. You'll be much more aware on behalf of the employers.
Yeah, and I think there's an example that I potentially given you before where I sat with a client who had been recruiting for a role and was really struggling, and he had 15 CVs in front of him, and he was happy to share those with me. We talked through them, and of those 15 CVs, 10 of them I knew straight away were wrong for the job because I know them. They are people who habitually apply for everything under the sun. Potentially 2 or 3 of them, the CVs weren't honest. So I think it's not just a case that when you're using a recruiter, it's not just because people haven't got the time to recruit or they just want to outsource it. It's also if you're with the right recruitment partner, it's their knowledge that you're buying into. And I've been recruiting in Oxfordshire since 2003. So, quite often I'll look at an application and go, oh, yeah. So you get to know, and that's invaluable. You can't teach that in, an MVQ or in 12 months.
And can save some businesses huge amounts of money.
Absolutely.
So if I was recruiting today, then what considerations should I be making to ensure that my role that I'm offering stands out from the crowd and is attracting the talent that I need?
Again, another analogy for that is quite interesting. If you're releasing a movie and it's 2 hours, 34 minutes long, your trailer is probably 2 minutes. And what I say to clients is your job description is a factual document which lists a set of skills, a set of personality requirements, and a set of duties, which is fantastic. It's not particularly attractive. It's not particularly interesting to read. So the job advert, you are taking the best bits from that piece of paper and creating a trailer. So it needs to be to the point, it needs to be hard hitting. If there's certain parts about the company that are particularly of interest, whether it's unlimited holidays or it's a fun, funky environment to work in, whether they do dress down Fridays or they like dogs in the office, whatever else is, it's making it interesting. The stat that came out probably about 3 years ago now, so it could be different now, but it was 2.6 seconds for a candidate to look at a job advert and decide whether to continue to apply for it or just to move on to the next.
Wow. 2.6 seconds. And I know our adverts can't be, I guess, discriminative in any way, but do you see people wording applications for a particular sort of millennial or?
It's really difficult, Mike, because, we can't discriminate. We shouldn't discriminate. But I also buy into the fact that for somebody, both from a candidate point of view and a client point of view, to be happy in their job, they need to be in the right environment. I recruited a few years ago for a company based in Wantage who inherently had a team of 45 people under the age of 25. I wouldn't want to work there. It just wouldn't work for me because they didn't talk about the same things I wanted to talk about. They had different sets of interests to me. It was just a very different environment. So I think it's important to look at a cultural fit. People spend a lot of time in work, or did do. And so it's really important to make sure that you're finding out what's important to the candidate with regards to a cultural fit as well as the client. Everybody's very different. And you do get people who are in their 40s who are obviously very young and would fit. Equally, you get people in their early 20s who've got a very different mindset. So it's about, these days over Zoom, talking to the candidate, getting to understand not just what's about their requirement with the job itself, but also about the wider job description, about the people that they work with, the type of culture the company has, what they stand for. For some people, particularly millennials, it's really important that the company maybe is carbon neutral or they have a bit more flexibility than somebody maybe who's got younger children who wants to know that they can finish at 5 o'clock and go home. So it's about finding out what their requirements are to match that to the client as well.
I remember having a conversation with an employment lawyer recently who was telling me a story of someone that because they didn't have a plastics policy, they didn't want the job. So all these change of expectations. Yeah. I know as a business that, you're obviously representing businesses to find talent, but you're very supportive of people that are looking for work as well in terms of their next role. So do you have any tips to share with people about their CV or their job hunting activity?
We've spent a lot of time in lockdown. Admittedly we were quiet, so we spent a lot of time in lockdown using that time to do quite a few conversations with people who are looking for work to advise them, give them some hints and tips from our point of view. And I think you see a lot of advice from potentially HR consultants or people who are CV experts, and that's great. But what I was trying to do is get them to see it from a recruiter's point of view. So to give people a prime example that was a real eye-opener for a lot of candidates is Indeed is probably the biggest job board at the moment on the market. The CV that you upload onto Indeed that you may spend 5 weeks getting perfect is not what we receive as a recruiter. And there was a chap actually that I placed recently who came via Indeed. His CV was shocking, absolutely shocking. But when he sent me his actual CV, it was fantastic. Wow. Hence the reason he got the job in the end. And so, one of the things people is to make sure you're following it up. If it is a genuine job that you think that you've got the skill set for, call the recruiter. Make yourself known. If you think about how many applications recruiters are getting at the moment, as much as we pride ourselves on the fact that we do respond to every application, a lot of agencies don't. They have their banner on the bottom of the job advert that just says, if you've not heard from us in 5 days, assume you haven't been successful. Well, that doesn't really tell the candidate whether the CV was received, whether they got the right CV, whether the consultant's actually even reviewed it. So the onus is on the candidate, not the recruiter. So take control of your own career and pick up the phone and speak to the recruiters, have a relationship with them, connect with them on LinkedIn, like what they're posting, because you want your name to be at the top of their list the next time a job comes in.
Yeah. And how much are you seeing people having to use video? Obviously you mentioned Zoom earlier, but I've seen many sort of applications sort of go and do us a little video to start with. Are you seeing much more movement in that?
Sometimes. I think it depends on the job. We did have a client last year who wanted people to submit a video CV for a finance role, and it didn't work.
Right.
Finance people are a different kettle of fish. I think if it's a marketing role or a grad role, potentially you've got more of an opportunity of getting somebody who would be happy to do it. And then also I think you've then got the chance that if someone's not great at producing a video, are they not going to get the job because their video isn't up to scratch? So I think it depends on the job and depends on the role. We use Zoom all the time now. And actually it has saved us a lot of time because we spent a lot of time traveling to the coffee shops, sitting there buying coffees with people and chatting about stuff. And so actually it's quite nice now that I set up an entire morning of back-to-back Zooms, talk to candidates, get an idea of what they're looking for, and then hopefully move forward and put them forward for interviews. A lot of clients are still doing first stage Zooms, but a lot of also then move forward to meeting them face-to-face for second stage.
Yeah, okay. So if I was recruiting, and I'm hoping as we emerge from lockdown, more people are going to be recruiting again now rather than, they can see a way forward, etc., and the opportunities, as I mentioned, that they face. If I'm going to go and recruit, what would be the process that you'd sort of recommend that I consider?
I think for me, it's looking at your business as a whole, and using the lockdown experience to potentially take a step back and reevaluate what you need. If you have unfortunately had to go through redundancies or people have left the business through that process, do you need to replace somebody like for like? Or can you actually look at your processes and now look at where your company's going and make a decision about it's actually a different job, we need a different skill set that we need? I think that's really critical because companies are very quick to say, Joe Bloggs has resigned. Oh, there's the job spec from 2 years ago. Give it to the recruiter. Let them recruit for that role again. Well, actually, the company hopefully in that 2-year period has evolved. So surely the job description should have evolved. The requirement would have evolved. So it's making sure you're checking that. And then I think it's about having that good, solid relationship with the recruiter that you can trust. Hopefully that's us. If it's not, then that's fine. But the worst mistake I think people make is they go out to 10, 12 recruiters, particularly in the current environment, and it becomes a bun fight for who can do it the cheapest. Not necessarily the best, but who can do it the cheapest. And you have to look at it from the point of view that that recruiter is representing your brand. And if they don't know you and they don't know your company and the culture, then how are they representing your brand to candidates? And how is that experience for the candidates that don't get the job? Do they get ghosted? Are they not told they didn't get the job, or they're not told they didn't get a CV sent through to them? So it's about a relationship. Again, goes back to us at the beginning, it's about communication.
And I've seen over the years, businesses go, oh, crikey, those recruitment agency, the fees, etc. But I see a little bit of softening to that because I think people have gone through that journey of not using recruiters and then see the expense of hiring the wrong person.
Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. I'm not going to sit here and lie about it, but I think there's also an element of that people don't see what we do behind the scenes, and just how many adverts we put out there, how much we monitor those, how many people we talk to before those final 4, 5, 6 CVs are sent to the client. We phone screen, we Zoom screen, we do the prep, we make sure that we've dug into their background, we know what's going on, making sure that they're ticking all the boxes, that they're not suddenly going to go for 8 months and then go off travelling. That was always their plan, but they weren't going to tell the client that. So it's really important because it's a small business. I understand it. I have made a mistake. I'm a recruiter, but I made a mistake, and it is expensive. So it's really important to slow the process down, ask the right questions, give the recruiter the right information, and then sit back and let them do their job.
I can't imagine now in terms of spending my time if I was getting 790 applications. It's about you value your time, isn't it? You might say expensive value for money or whatever, but my time in sort of sifting through that, getting the wrong decision, recruiting the wrong person and having to do it again, plus the cost of getting rid of that person, it's just like, it's a no-brainer for me.
Absolutely.
So certainly recommend speaking to you to help them do that. So last thing, final tip for businesses as we emerge from lockdown, probably recruitment related. What would it be?
Again, assess what you need. Don't do a knee-jerk reaction, just recruit like for like. It's been a horrible time for businesses, and as a business owner, I can categorically agree with that. But I think it's a case of take stock, use this time to almost refresh where your business is going, which direction it's going, and take that step back and maybe talk to someone like you as a business coach, or just reach out to a recruiter and have that conversation about this is what we want in the market. Does this even exist? And I had a conversation with a client last week, and I said, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Prime example, somebody who's looking for a marketing person who can do accounts. Those skill sets do not go together. You do not want a creative accountant.
Yeah. I think it's, I've been doing a lot of work actually with clients over the last couple of weeks about their organisational structure.
Yeah.
And, they might have let somebody go, or they may be on the hiring piece, but that's all around making sure they have a lean structure to move forward, but still an efficient structure to maximise those opportunities going forward. So thanks for sharing your tips. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Brilliant. And how do people look you up online?
LinkedIn's really easy. We've got a good Facebook presence as well. We're pretty good on our Instagram. So I think probably initial either LinkedIn or our website.
I guess a recruiter not LinkedIn wouldn't be a recruiter.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Thanks again, Helen. Thanks for joining
Mike.
us. So up next, and our last expert to the room, is Hayley Monks from Think, Inspire and Create, Tickle, who's our expert around people and process development. So join me in a couple of moments and I'll be interviewing Hayley. Welcome back to our expert interviews as part of this live stream, Bounce Back from Lockdown, helping you to think out your business to thrive in the future and maximise those opportunities ahead of you. And I'm delighted that our last expert is Hayley Monks from Tickle, Think, Inspire and Create, who's our expert around people and process development. So we've talked about HR, we've talked about recruitment, but now it's about the talent we have and how we can maximise that from a people and a process position, because I think you're going to hear from Hayley how they're very much interlinked. So welcome, Hayley. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Would you like to take a couple of moments just to tell us a little bit about Tickle, yourself, and how you support businesses?
Yeah, sure. So Tickle, we help businesses identify opportunities, areas to improve, processes to improve, and people effectiveness. And then we facilitate effective change that work for both customers and colleagues, ultimately to improve the financial performance of that business. And then we also support the design and implementation of training programs that support that work and the changes that those businesses are going through.
Excellent. Super. Thank you. And what we're looking forward is in terms of how businesses emerge, the sort of tips we can share. And with the latest government guidance and the rules, again, it looks like home working's here for a few more months, should we say. And I see that Tickle have completed a survey recently around home working. So hot off the press, do you have any thoughts that you can sort of share with us as what the results were of that survey?
Yes. It's our How Did Work From Home Work For You survey, which we ran through August and closed at the end of August. We had hundreds of responses. What was amazing about the survey, we made it really simple for people to complete, but we had sort of 80-90% of the people who answered the survey also provided some verbatim comment for every question. So it has taken us several weeks to analyse the data and bring that information together. And the survey now, which we've named the 5 C's of lockdown, communication, collaboration, change, coaching and culture. That is going to be available now tomorrow. So anybody who filled in the survey and gave us their email address, we'll be sending a copy out tomorrow. But what can I tell you about what's come out of it? Firstly, there wasn't one single message that came out of it. And what do I mean by that was the responses varied depending on the groups of people that were completing it. And we grouped these, or they were easily grouped into seniority, because we'd asked people about their level, length of time in the business, and also domestic arrangements. So those who were more senior in business came back with different views, and that was often linked to the domestic arrangements. They are more likely to have a home office set up. Interestingly, those who were new into businesses, they didn't have that natural network. They hadn't built that network, so they felt more isolated and definitely in more need of communication. And domestic arrangements was absolutely crucial. If you're flat sharing and your bedroom becomes your workspace, your relaxing space and your sleeping space, that actually didn't make the work from home experience particularly good. There were some real positives, and drawing out those positives, they were no commuting. Everybody was, yay, no commuting, that's a great one. The ability to eat healthily and choose what you eat, so to cook and prepare your own food rather than maybe having a sandwich on the go. And overall, this general sense of better well-being, that people felt that lives were better. But some of these great things were outweighed by some of the things I've already mentioned, but also that connectedness. So as humans, we naturally want to connect with other humans, and that ability to understand how your team are feeling emotionally, how people are getting on, and what's really going on behind the camera was far harder. And the ability to get people up to speed on change. So what's come out is the things that probably we didn't really understand fully when we worked in an office, that when you're co-working, you're hearing and seeing things that you're just taking on board. So you may have noticed new posters go up, or customers visit the site, or senior managers meet the site, or different people doing things, and you will have chatted about it in the office, and that learning by osmosis that just naturally occurred meant that when change happens, people were more ready for change. Whereas now everything is a shock, everything is new news, because there's no way of seeing or hearing what's going on, and there's no way of learning from your colleagues. So I think, there's some fantastic insights, and there's some real messages for businesses going forward that a whole work from home arrangement is going to be difficult. Not everybody wants it, but the need for communication and collaboration is really important. And just using video conferencing isn't going to cut it. I'll read a quote for you, if I may, because we had a lot of fantastic quotes, which I think kind of summed it up for me, is that I miss the random conversations with people outside of my normal circle of activity. I think this is sometimes where the magic happens. And I think that's the great thing about working in an office environment, is that you get to speak to other people and see other things. And that can help to improve what you do and your well-being in the workplace.
I certainly have seen that. I think if you have conversations with people that had offices a month ago, they say, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to the office. It's all about home working now. We just have an office to get together every so often. Now it's, okay. Now the distraction of maybe homeschooling and all those sort of factors have sort of drifted away, if you like. They're going, okay, the value of getting our people together, and exactly as you've summarised in there. Fantastic summary. Thank you for that. So it's out tomorrow, do you say?
Yes.
Okay. Will we find that on your social media?
You will find, well, you won't find it generally on social media, because we have said that anybody who filled in the survey can have a copy, but we are doing them on request. You'll be able to find a link to our webpage where you'll be able to request a copy.
And certainly some of the summaries around those 5 C's, which is quite exciting to hear. I love the way that you've broken that down, so can't wait to see the results. So let's think about Tickle a little bit more then, because I know at Tickle that you love to use your visuals to get faster results with the work that you do. So how can visuals help a team make better decisions faster?
So in short, a picture tells 1,000 words, and it really is true. So visuals remove that individual interpretation of words that occur. So we very quickly can come to a common understanding. So we will use visuals to break down something that's quite complex, to increase collaboration, to improve co-creation and innovation. And teams will actually start to work more effectively together when they get to look at those visuals. It's easier to build on one another's ideas through visuals and pictures. So we over the last few years have refined how we've worked with visuals, and we've practiced how we work with them to detail processes, to tell stories, to break down things that are complex into to simple visuals or simple models to help that understanding. And what we have found consistently in all of the workshops and facilitation we've done using visuals is that the people in the room are far higher engaged with what's happening when we're actually getting to work with visuals, whether that's physically doing it as we used to do it in a workshop with post-it notes and pens, or remotely doing it with collaborative online whiteboards. The experience is still the same. It's the actual ability to tell that story through pictures. And with that higher engagement becomes a more interest in that in-depth understanding. So people are taking the time and the effort to actually understand what's happening and to contribute. So we get to common understanding and outcome quicker. And once you've refined then, actually this is our problem, and we all see it, that big aha moment where everybody goes, I get it, I can see what's not working, or I see what we need to change. It's very easy then to come up with, okay, so what are our solutions? And then we'd adapt exactly the same approach over again, using the visuals to try and design the common solution. And so, it's been practice in doing it, but also consistent outcomes and feedback from our customers about how it works.
I know pre-lockdown, whenever we had a conversation, you'd love to stand up, you'd love to draw something, you'd like, use the visual way. And I remember seeing a workshop where it was like post-it notes all over the wall, etc. But I guess when you first went to Zoom, that was quite difficult to do in terms of if you stood up, you came off screen. But I know you've again pivoted over lockdown and brought a lot of that online. I know you've got some great feedback. So tell us a little bit about how people have found bringing that sort of mapping experience or those sort of processes online.
So getting to grips with the digital switch was fast. At first I thought, actually, is this possible? Can you create that creative energy, and can you design something in a virtual world? And absolutely, yes, you can. So there are various different whiteboards out there, and some have better functionalities than others. So depending on what an organisation is looking for, I would give different advice. But we use a purpose-built collaborative whiteboard called Mural. And within that whiteboard, you can pretty much do anything. We can bring in documents. You can put post-it notes on. You can draw images. You can create process maps. And you can duplicate and replicate images and stuff that you've done very quickly. So actually it's probably faster than it is actually doing it in a physical room where we may have to take photos of the images we created and then get them created in the office. We can actually do it live in the room. And the fantastic thing about doing that is we can see who else is in there and who's working. So if we're working directly with clients, they can see my mouse, they can see me move, I can see their mouse. We can communicate either by video or by audio or both. And so we can coordinate what we're doing. The excitement that it's generated with people has been really surprising because it's so creative, and actually because they contribute to creating something that's so easy to understand and so quickly. Engagement's been huge, and we're frequently getting positive feedback from our clients about how great it is to work in that space.
And it really surprised me. You invited me into a session with some other business owners whereby we had a play with that online, and even I could use it. So, it makes it simple to understand and use, particularly through your facilitation and your leadership.
It's a really intuitive tool. And yesterday we onboarded some new people into the product. And I think 30 minutes is sufficient enough observation and training for them to be proficient and start contributing to a project or a process. It really is that simple.
Brilliant. And one of the things that you offer at Tickle is that blend between the people and the process development. Tell me a little bit more about how that integrates and works together.
So my experience over the years as I've been running Tickle is that I've never been into a business where people haven't wanted to do the right thing. So people in roles, they're trying to do the right thing. They're often have had insufficient training. They don't have understanding of the process. They may be new into the business, or the business has grown really fast, and so lots of things have changed or been added on. And so when you go in and you look at looking at improving a process or looking at some form of efficiency and effectiveness model, there's always got to be a people element to it, because it's the people who actually deploy that process. And so there's a combination of actually what isn't physically working in the process. Is it a system issue? Is it an understanding issue or a routing problem? Or is it that actually the humans that are running the process don't understand it or aren't doing the right thing? So they naturally blend together. And when you start to look at capability of individuals, I like to think of it as an equation. So capability equaling skills plus knowledge over behaviour. And blend that then with the process. If you've got a clear, well-documented process that works systemically and operationally, and then you have capable people who are not only skilled, but have the knowledge of that process, then you've got a recipe for success. And looking at them in isolation only fixes part of the problem. You can re-engineer a process, but if the people aren't educated to understand it, it won't work. And when I use the word educated, I mean engaged with it. So understanding what it is and why they're doing what they're doing and what the outcomes are and why it's important to the business. Once they understand that and they care, actually the process improves, but they also improve because they feel more knowledgeable, more capable and more valued.
Brilliant. And I know, I would certainly recommend someone to have a coffee with you so you can share some case studies, because I know you've got a huge number of case studies about how that blend makes a huge difference. I'm going to reflect on a blog of yours that I read recently, which was, how do I know if my team are productive as they can be? So this seems to be a very topical question right now, especially with remote teams. So do you have any tips that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, an observation is that, productivity is such an old phrase, sort of 1970s type phrase. It is, I've used it in the blog, and I think in reflection, it's how do I know if my team are as effective, maybe, as they can be? So yeah, firstly, I suppose my 3 tips would be, don't just rely on data, don't assume, and probably get curious. So what do I mean by those? Data's fantastic, and it's the first point people normally go to. So it's either we're getting lots of complaints, or we're not billing sufficiently, we're not getting enough revenue, or there's some form of data that's giving you an indication that something's wrong. Don't just rely on that. So data's great for signposting, but what the data's saying is something's not working, come and explore. Which leads me on to the don't assume. It's really easy to jump to conclusions with data, and the devil is most definitely in the detail. And so go and ask and find out, get curious with the team and find out what's not working and why. I firmly believe that the brain that has the problem does have the solution. And my experience of working with organizations is actually when you talk to the people who doing the job, they can give you the 10 reasons why it's not working or why they're not as effective as they could be. And they're often things that actually are quite simply fixed, or they're bigger things that the organization knows about. And for whatever reason, funding or timing is choosing not to do something about it. So when you speak to those people, if you create the right environment and give the right space, they'll give you the answers. So these will be the high level things. Don't just, look at the data, don't assume, get curious, and ask the people.
Nice, thank you for those. So last up, any sort of final tip that you would give to businesses emerging from lockdown to make sure that we thrive and maximise our opportunities?
An overriding tip, I would say, in terms of really spend some time understanding where your people are. Employee engagement and how people feel is a massive impact on their business, on their contribution to the business, on productivity and their engagement in the business. And just by going and asking and finding out, you could find out something that you could help sort really quickly. Whether it is in the domestic arrangement, whether it's in better seating. A lot of people have been sat at kitchen desks, kitchen tables. It's not great for the environment. So I was actually spend some time talking to your people, maybe read our survey and take some tips from that, but talk to their people and find out what are the small things that will make a big difference.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, sharing your tips. If people want to know a little bit more about Tickle or this science around people and process, where should they go?
So Google us, Think, Inspire, Create, or Tickle. You can find us on LinkedIn as well, or links back to our website.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks again for sharing your thoughts, tips with us, and speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
So just to close, thank you to all our experts that have given up some of their valuable time today to be with us and share their knowledge, their expertise, their experience. We've shared their contact details before introducing them, and please do not hesitate to contact them with any further questions you have. I know all the experts are willing to share some time in that way. Thanks to Nicola Franks from Oxford PA for supporting us today with the logistics of the event. Thanks to Kellie from Hilton Garden Inn and the team here from the hotel for being fabulous hosts, and as you heard earlier, how they're helping businesses. Big thanks to my partner in this event, Matt Eastland-Jones, the man behind the camera over here, in terms of streaming the content for you, dealing with all the technical aspect, because I wouldn't have been able to deliver that event for you in that particular way. So it's been fantastic to partner with Matt in this way. It was his creative ideas that brought this to life. And it's a really important event, I think, to help businesses thrive the other side of this lockdown. And finally, thank you to all of you that have spent some time, whether it's a few moments or the whole 2 hours, for watching this live stream. We do hope that you've taken something away from this event today that's maybe a nugget or just a thought to help you develop your business. And as I say, thrive in the future and maximise those opportunities that we all have in front of us in these coming months. Thanks again. That's the end of our expert interviews today, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again soon. Thank you.